Lillahi ta'ala, I ask Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala that He would make this session beneficial for myself and for you. Let's talk about how to read a map. The author said, this is how one reads a map. Map makers draw two sets of lines. A set of east-west lines parallel to the equator. East-west lines, that means they're going across. East-west lines means the lines that are going across. And a set of north-south lines crossing the equator. The result is a grid, a network of reference lines for pinpointing locations and establishing distance and direction between places. So basically, these lines on the globe replace the sun and the North Star, or on any map, these lines on any map, these lines on a map replace the sun and the North Star and these different things. In real life, to know east, we refer to the sunrise. To know west, the sunset. To know north, the North Star. But when you have a map, you don't have also representations of those things, the sun and the North Star. So what they use on a map to determine directions and distance is lines. They use lines. Some of those lines go across, some of those lines go down. And then the result is a grid. The first one, it says equator with a blue line, and then has the lines above it and below it. Those are latitude lines. The latitude goes from side to side. If it goes east and west from side to side, that means that they are for determining north and south, because they go up and down. One line above the next, and one below the next, below the next, below the next. So those lines that go from side to side are for determining what degree north or south. And the lines that go down, those are called longitude lines. They go down, or in terms of most maps, they go from north to south, up and down. And so they are for determining the east and the west. Those lines that go up and down from north to south, they are one next to the other, one next to the other, one next to the other. That's for determining east and west. So the lines that go across, and there's one on top of the other, that's for determining north and south. The lines that go up and down, one next to the other, that's for determining east and west. And then you see the grid in the third one when you look at all of them. So I think that's clear. I'll keep going, inshallah. The position of a point north or south of the equator is known as its latitude. Its lines are called parallels of latitude, or simply parallels. Lines of latitude, or latitude lines, run east and west from side to side, but north-south positions are referenced by them. The entire USA and Canada has a higher degree of latitude than Mecca. It means in terms of the latitude according to the map, America has a higher degree of latitude towards the north than Mecca does towards the north. Mecca has a lower degree of latitude towards the north. It's closer to the equator. The second set of lines passing through the poles is known as meridians of longitude, or simply meridians, or longitude lines. One meridian is designated as the prime meridian. So there's a meridian designated as the prime meridian. So the prime meridian is something like the equator, except going north and south. The equator goes east and west. It's a line going through the middle. You know that, inshallah. The prime meridian is something comparable to the equator, except going north and south. The prime meridian is a longitude line, one of the lines that goes up and down. The equator is a latitude line, a line that goes side to side. If you notice, it says one meridian is designated as the prime meridian. And doesn't say which one, because they disagree what's the prime meridian. You can designate one of them as your prime meridian. And different countries have different standards of what's the prime meridian. Is that clear? So, we're not saying what is right or what is wrong. We're just saying this is how you read the map. So one line, one meridian is designated as the prime meridian. The position east or west of a prime meridian is its longitude. Lines of longitude, meridians, run north-south, but east-west positions are referenced by them. There is no difference in opinion that Mecca is to our east. Nobody differs about that. But it is not true that east is sufficient for the one who knows that Mecca is in the desert. But it is not true that east is sufficient for the one who knows that Mecca is in the desert and that the warm region of the earth is to our south. Meaning, if someone believes that, if a person knows that towards the equator is the warm area, away from the equator is cold. So the further you go from the equator, it gets colder. The closer you go to the equator, it gets warmer. And Mecca is in that warm area, which is south of us, yani. The person knows that is south of us. And we're closer to that cold area. Then how could he just face due east only? If he knows, if he understands that that the Kaaba is south of east, then he should face south of east and not just face east only. If he faces a direction different from what he really believes is the Qiblah, that's invalid. Here are other projections with respective latitude and longitude lines. So, brothers and sisters, latitude and longitude lines are the key for reading a map. The key for reading a map, I mean, of course, is by knowing how to understand these lines that you understand the map. If a person understands how to read a map, there's no way he can believe that this northeast thing is, that northeast curve is a straight line in one direction. And if he knows how to read a map, there's no way that he would say, we can't use the flat map, let's use the globe. Anyone who knows how to read a map, who really understands that, not just look at the countries and know which country is which, and to know that north is up and south is down, and then you really don't know what's east and what's west without thinking too hard. Anyone who understands how to read a map properly would never say, we can't use the flat map, we have to use the globe. unless he's not using the globe as a map. So then he should just say, we shouldn't use a flat map, let's just use a ball. Question, go ahead. You said, does using either the flat map or globe make a difference in understanding how to read the lines of latitude and longitude? No. I think that will become clearer. All right, this map here. You see prime meridian at the top. Right below it is 0 degrees going from north to south. So whatever is right of a meridian is east. Whatever is left of a meridian is west. You see the equator also in the middle on both sides, the word equator, which is also 0 degrees. So you have to have a prime meridian, which is 0 degrees. And you have to have an equator, which is 0 degrees. And then as you see, the numbers increase in both directions from 0. So you have 0. Above 0 is 15 degrees. Below 0 is 15 degrees. I'm looking at the equator. You have 0 degrees at the equator. Above it is 15 degrees. Below it is 15 degrees. So what's the one above it? 15 degrees north. The one below it is 15 degrees south. Look at the prime meridian. There's 0 degrees. On both sides of it, there's 30 degrees. One to the right, one to the left. So what's that 30 degrees to the right? That's 30 degrees east. What's that 30 degrees to the left? 30 degrees west. And like that, there's a grid across the entire map. Now, if you know how to read those lines, then you know for sure two things. One, that Mecca is definitely southeast of USA, assuming that the map is correct, and there's no map that doesn't have Mecca southeast of USA. Two, if you know how to read these lines, then you would never say that we can't use the flat map, we have to use the globe. Never. Unless you don't care about the map that's on the globe. Look at this next one. That's an interesting picture. If you know how to read the lines, then you can explain. It is for this reason our determination of Mecca being southeast of the USA does not contradict any map, not a flat map or a globe. We are actually reading the map and following its rules. Again, the map is not our proof, but the map complies with the reality of the situation. The person who knows how to read a map knows that as long as the land masses, of course, those drawings that represent land masses, that represent continents, fall on the grid of latitude and longitude lines properly, then the distortion of the map is irrelevant. If you're really reading the grid properly, because they have to distort the picture to fit the grid. The grid is more important than the shape of the continent. So if they're trying to do something with that grid, then they're going to have to adjust the continents accordingly on the picture that you see. So that's why you might see it stretched out, you might see it close together. You might see on one that one island looks super huge, and you see on the other one that same island looks much smaller. Is that clear? The distortion exists because different maps have different purposes. When did the Muslims become ignorant of how to read maps? Therefore, the equator is 0 degrees on any map. Even if the projection of that map shows the equator bending. Even if the projection itself shows that the equator is bending. or broken, or closer to the top of the page or closer to the bottom of the page, the equator will always be 0 degrees. Also, the North Pole is 90 degrees on any map, no matter the projection or the distortion of the map. And let me be extra clear, just because some people will nitpick. I'm not saying that distortion is good. What I'm saying is the way to read the map is by knowing how to read this grid. And because the grid itself is so important that if they, for some reason, want to stretch the lines apart or bring them closer together or something like that, or make a particular projection, then the shapes that represent the continents will have to be distorted so they can fit the grid. This statement doesn't mean that distortion is good. So 90 degrees, North Pole is 90 degrees on any map, no matter the projection or the distortion of the map. Observe other projections. If the latitude and longitude lines are properly distributed, then Mecca is southeast of the USA on all of them, even the globe. So here it says figure 03, demonstrating the relationship between the globe and a flat map. All right. Now, this picture on the left, which represents a globe, you should know that that's a flat image. It appears to be a globe because of the drawing itself. The lines that are turning, it appears like a globe, but always know that really that's a flat image. When you see that flat image and perceive it as a globe, that's an optical illusion. Is that clear? When you saw it and perceived it one way that really is not the way it is, that's the optical illusion. Is that clear, brothers and sisters? That's very important. We talked about that in some previous classes. So, figure 03 is demonstrating the relationship between a globe and a flat map. And really, there's no globe on the page. That's just to give you an idea only. That's not a globe. That's a picture that's just as flat as the one next to it. But it's just to give you an idea that as long as the grid is set up properly, then the map is right. And as long as the land masses fall on the grid properly, then the map is correct. It doesn't matter whether it's a globe or whether it's a flat map. Here you have this map that's broken the way it's broken for whatever reason. As long as the land masses fall on the grid properly, the map is correct. That's not how the world looks, and that doesn't make this map wrong. Here's another. If the land masses fall on the grid properly, then it's correct. The equator is where it's supposed to be, for example, all the degrees are right, it's correct. Same thing. Yes, go ahead, ask your question. It says, you said the prime meridian differs according to some countries. Does the equator reference differ too? No, not in any map that I've ever seen in my life. And so we ask the Northeast supporter, is latitude and longitude relevant or not? Is this grid relevant? If he says yes, then he must face southeast, as per reading the map as it should be read. Every single map, whether it's a globe or it's not a globe, even this broken one right here above the text, this blue and green map, according to this map, Mecca is southeast of the United States and Canada. We'll come back to this map to see something silly that Northeast people did. So is latitude and longitude relevant or not? If he says yes, then he must face southeast, as per reading the map, as it should be read. If he says no, then why is he calling his line northeast? Why is he calling his line northeast? That's the second time we're asking this question. Before, if he claims cardinal directions are not relevant, you just have to go forward, then why is he calling his line northeast? If cardinal directions are not relevant, why doesn't he just call his line forward? Also here, if latitude and longitude lines are not relevant, then why are you calling your line northeast? Based on what? You're certainly not putting a string over the real Earth. How did you, Yani, when you put a string over a globe, you said, look, it goes northeast. That's what you say. You put the string over the globe and say, look, it goes northeast. You chose the words northeast when you used the globe. So how are you determining northeast on the globe? Why are you calling your line northeast if latitude and longitude lines are irrelevant? And how are you calling this line, the string that you pulled over the globe, northeast, based on what? It's not based on the sun or the North Star, because this is only a globe. Knowing north on the map is by latitude lines, and knowing east on the map is by longitude lines. That is as far as reading the map is concerned. So what probably is the problem of many, many people is that, I'm only guessing, they have no idea what those lines are there for. I'm trying to understand the psyche of one who's looking at this case like a Northeast person. So what it seems to me is that he has this globe in his hand, and the globe has lines on it, and really those lines don't mean anything to him. Probably because he doesn't really know why are those lines there. Or maybe he just thinks that for some reason they make maps like that. They just always put lines on them so you can know it's a map, maybe. I don't know. But what he does know is that up is north and down is south. And he can know east and west on the map. And so he said, look at the string, it goes northeast. Excuse me. You said, I've never met anyone who claims northeast who can explain their position using a map. They simply say, we follow our imam. That's it. We'll come to talk about that too, inshallah. In reality, knowing north would be by the North Star, and knowing east would be by the sunrise. However, a mere ball or sphere is not looked at as having north or south. A mere ball or mere sphere. Once we assign north or south on the ball or the sphere, it becomes a sort of map. And then it must be read as maps are read. So even if they choose to not use a globe which is a map and just a ball. Let's say, for example, one guy said, you know what, man, forget all that stuff you're talking about. Yeah, I'm just using a ball. So what? Now, that's what I want to do. I'm just going to use a ball. And I'm going to call this line northeast. And it's a straight line. And he's saying, I don't care about maps. I confess. So what should you say to him? You say, once we assign north or south on that ball or sphere, because he's going to have to say, okay, this is north and this is south. Once we assign north or south on the ball or sphere, it becomes a sort of map. And then it has to be read as maps are read. So you still have to follow the rules of a map. Is that clear? The person who supports northeast cannot hold both sides. If he wants to refer to a round object simply for its shape, then he cannot assign cardinal directions to it and treat it like a map. And then he cannot validly call his line northeast. He should just call it forward, or he should just call it the curve, or something like that. Although he can successfully find the shortest distance between 2 points on an object by placing a string over it, sure, he can do that. If he wants a globe, then he cannot ignore the fact that it is a map and not a mere ball. And thus he cannot validly name a line northeast based on the shortest distance. He can't take a map, then call a line northeast based on the shortest distance. That is not how you read a map. Nor can he refuse any other map. Now, once he says, okay, I'm going to use that globe as a map, then once he does that, now he cannot ignore any of the other maps also. Because he just reads the lines the same. For all maps have one thing in common: latitude and longitude lines. So if the grid on a map is irrelevant, then based on what is he determining north and east on the globe when he pulls his string? If he names his line northeast because of a North Pole at 90 degrees and an equator at 0 degrees, if that's why he called his line northeast, then he has to be consistent all the way through. And he has to respect the entire grid and accept the latitude and longitude coordinates between 0 and 90. And then he needs to face southeast because he's making a mistake. If he wants to ignore all latitude and longitude, then he has confessed that he is not seeking a direction. Even on the map that he's using, he's not looking for a direction on that map. And he has validated that of which we have accused him. Yani, he's proving us right. You are not facing the direction. You're not even looking for the direction. You're just calling your line northeast. You're giving it the name of a direction, and you didn't look for a direction, and you didn't want a direction. You wanted a distance. وَبِاللَّهِ التَّوْفِيقُ.